Okay, welcome to Strategy 10, the last strategy of TABE Language M. This one's on writing informational pieces, kind of like Strategy 9 was on writing opinion pieces. This one we'll talk about the parts of an informational essay or short piece, what those parts should do and what kind of things should be in them. But again, you're not actively writing on the TABE test, at least not yet, maybe a couple years from now. If you know somebody who's going through this process, they'll write on the TABE test, but your writing will be on the GED exam. But on the TABE, you'll answer a lot of questions about writing, mostly about the organization of writing, depending on whether it's an informational piece or an opinion piece. All right, let's dive in. Informative or explanatory texts convey information and ideas about a topic. The introduction to an informative or explanatory text should introduce a topic clearly with a topic sentence, kind of like with opinion pieces, but this one doesn't necessarily communicate opinion. Precise language is preferable to vague or general language. And this is one of the focuses actually of this lesson, is choosing language that is precise rather than vague or generic. And so in our chart, we've got some examples of generic or vague language converted over into the kind of precise language that would fit in an informational piece. So the architect showed us the building. Showed is a weak verb. Building is not very descriptive of what kind of building it is. So the architect took us on a tour, much more robust version than showed, of the newly constructed tower. So this is what we're talking about. It is taking language that's vague, that doesn't tell us a whole lot, and adding the kind of detail and precision that makes it right for an informational piece. So a group of people chose their next leader. Could we possibly be more vague? A committee headed by the current chair discussed the candidates and then voted for next year's chair. Or the performances got better. As the actors became more comfortable with their roles, performances improved. So most of the time it is about adding detail, adding precise detail that your reader needs to know in order to understand your informational text. Okay, and the next part is on domain-specific vocabulary. I may have touched on this a little bit when talking about vocabulary. Actually, now that I think about it, it was in the reading course. So if you've done Reading M, you may have heard me talk about domain-specific vocabulary as a way of interpreting the meaning of words that you're not familiar with. But also, domain-specific vocabulary appears in informational text, and we should use it depending on what particular subject area we're writing about. So in addition, try to use domain-specific vocabulary when appropriate. Domain-specific language is most often found in informational texts on topics like chemistry, biology, mathematics, and earth science. And so I'm not going to read through all these like I did with the general language that we were making precise, but use the domain-specific terminology rather than trying to kind of flail around describing something that has an official term. A narrow strip of land. Well, that is an isthmus. That's the definition of an isthmus. So whenever possible, add that kind of terminology and vocabulary. One, it boosts your credibility, but two, in this case, there might be a little bit less work because you're using one word instead of a whole sentence to define something. All right, we'll look at the example here. There are 6 main components of a framed piece of art. Okay, good topic sentence. I would expect it's going to describe the 6 parts as the supporting details. The first is the frame itself. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but look, the first, the second, next, followed by, last. So they didn't number these parts. In a paragraph, that wouldn't necessarily be the best way to do it. But through their relationship words like first, second, next, finally, last, they oriented these steps. They provided the language to lead us through them without necessarily numbering them. Okay. Our guided practice 1 says to read the paragraph and rewrite the sentences in the correct order. I wasn't confident that there was enough room to do that, so I just numbered them. So let me read it off to you in the correct order. When we think of pollinators, we usually think of bees. However, see, however is responding to something already. It couldn't be first. Butterflies also pollinate flowers. Butterflies are less efficient at pollinating than bees are, but they are still very active. All right, so sentence 1 brings up the concept of pollinators and bees. Sentence 2 tells us that there's another kind of pollinator called a butterfly. And then sentence 3, going off the mention of butterflies, tells us why or how they're pollinators. All right, ignore the scribbles here. I did it the wrong way the first time. But for questions 2 through 4, or indicating which of the two sentences would be an appropriate introduction for the other, and why. And so you can see the order here. The Great Lakes in North America contain about 1/5 of the fresh water on the Earth's surface. And then in sentence 2, we get an example. So we wouldn't necessarily want the example before our topic. Okay, in number 3, the first sentence, or sentence A, is our intro sentence. It identifies and names the tiger, and then sentence 2 tells us a little bit more about the tiger. All right, question 4 was not one of those. It's a multiple choice. Okay, 4, the paragraph is missing an introduction. Which of these sentences would best introduce the topic? And it's D. Light switches may seem magical, but they actually just operate simple electrical circuits. And then the paragraph goes on to describe that process. Okay, 5, this paragraph is also missing an introduction. Which of the sentences would best introduce the topic? And it's B. I'm going to share my secret hot chocolate recipe with you. And then we have relationship language that leads us through the steps of that process. Okay, we're only about halfway through this lesson. We've got a little bit more on informative or explanatory texts. And, this is about the structure of them itself. You reviewed how to write an introduction, but the body and conclusion of a text are just as important. The body of an informative or explanatory text should include a variety of supporting information, like facts, definition, concrete details, quotations, and examples. Information should logically be grouped and linked with appropriate vocabulary. The conclusion of a text must be related to the information presented. It should summarize the main idea without introducing new information. Okay, so our introduction, tigers are fascinating creatures. That's our working introduction. So they're kind of showing us some examples of what they mean by the type of details that can support the introduction throughout the body of the text. So facts, like the tiger being the largest of cat species. A definition, an official definition of something. A concrete detail, telling us a characteristic or something about the tiger that's representative of the whole. A quotation from maybe an expert or someone who's written about tigers. In this one, it's not necessarily a biologist or a scientist of tigers by any means, but the author of Calvin and Hobbes, a comic strip about a tiger, or rather an imaginary tiger. An example that people, reading your text or reading the text can probably relate to. Shere Khan, the tiger in the Jungle Book. So a bunch of different types of details, and what they talk about with variety is what we've accomplished here. Not just a list of facts, not just a list of quotes, but variety of evidence. And then in the conclusion, we connect back to the reasons, and then we restate the topic sentence. In this case, tigers are extremely interesting beasts, pretty similar to tigers are fascinating creatures. Okay, I'm going to skip over the example, and we'll just go to the practice itself. Okay, in 6, we're expected to find the phrases that link together to find a logical order. And what they mean is that a sentence should connect back to something in the sentence that preceded it or that was before it. That's what they mean. So when I underline here the first sentence, fastest land animal in the world, in the second sentence I underline thin, light body because it tells us a little bit about why it is the fastest land animal in the world. Let's see here. Extreme changes in direction, sharp turns. Also, more information about why the animal is the fastest in the world. This one, extreme changes in direction, helps us define the term sharp turns, or sharp turns, I should say. So there should be a logic to your sentences. The sentence should connect in some way back to information in the sentence that came before. Okay, so 7 through 9, we're just finding the correct linking word based on its meaning to connect the two parts of the paragraph. So in 7, it's however. These ideas stand in opposition or contradiction to one another. In 8, it's for example, because the second part here, the bringing cloth bags, is an example of reducing the amount of plastics that we use. And in number 9, we're dealing with additional information, so we use and. Okay, and then the last two for this one, going off the long passage here about penguins. In 10, which sentence should be removed because it includes unnecessary or distracting details? It's C7, sentence 7, because we don't have any other mention of eye color of penguins, and it doesn't necessarily relate to their ability to handle cold and their feathers either. Okay, 11. The paragraph is missing a conclusion. Which of these sentences would best conclude the paragraph? And it's C. Who knew that a penguin's feathers had so many important responsibilities? Connects back and paraphrases to sentence 1, which is our topic sentence, and of course kind of calls back to some of the reasons that they talked about with this word responsibilities. Okay, so that ends strategy 10. That actually ends the instruction for TABE Language M. You'll have a couple more videos to watch. The next one after you do the Unit 3 review, and then you'll have a longer one that goes over the final practice test after you do that. But we're almost at the end. Hope that you've learned a lot. I'll be seeing you back here for the D-level course at some point. But certainly take advantage of all the ways you can get in touch with me. Email, my cell phone number is here on Canvas. You can call up here to the center itself, or I think you might even be able to message me here on Canvas too. So any of those ways are good. I'm here to help you. I'll see you next time.